What does it take to make a legend bleed? Kaera stood in the viewing gallery of the Obsidian Arena, her silver hair catching the harsh violet light from the energy barriers below, and wondered if this human truly understood what he'd just agreed to. Commander Thrace the Untouched had never lost a combat trial in 17 cycles, had never been struck in over 300 recorded duels, and this newcomer from a backwater planet called Earth had just accepted his challenge with nothing more than a crooked smile and a shrug. She pressed her palm against the transparent barrier, her luminescent skin casting a faint blue glow on the surface, and felt her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the way the human, Marcus Kane, had looked at her before stepping into the ring. "You worried about me already?" he'd asked, those earth-brown eyes twinkling with something between confidence and recklessness. "I haven't even done anything impressive yet." That word echoed in her mind now as the combat bell rang, a deep, resonant tone that made the air itself vibrate. Thrace moved first, as he always did, his four-armed Corthian frame uncoiling like a spring-loaded weapon, claws extended, coming at Marcus with the kind of speed that had ended fights before opponents could blink. But Marcus wasn't there anymore. The human had shifted left, not with alien enhancement or technological augmentation, but with pure, calculated movement, and his fist connected with Thrace's lower rib cage before the commander's first strike even completed its arc. The crowd's murmur was a physical thing, a wave of disbelief that washed through the arena. Kaera felt it too, that impossible moment crystallizing in her mind. Thrace recovered with the pride of a warrior who'd just experienced something novel, something almost exciting, and launched a combination attack that should have overwhelmed any opponent. Marcus ducked under the high strikes, stepped inside the low ones, and drove his elbow into Thrace's solar plexus with precision that spoke of countless hours of training in methods the galaxy had never seen. Impossible, breathed Zythe, her fellow navigation officer, but Kaera couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but watch as this human moved like water through stone, like he could see 3 seconds into the future. Thrace roared, abandoning technique for overwhelming force, and Marcus did something that would be replayed on every Holonet channel for weeks afterward. He went forward, directly into Thrace's charge, dropped to one knee and slid across the polished arena floor, rising behind the commander to deliver a devastating strike to the base of Thrace's spine. 4 came half a second later, a follow-up punch to the kidney that made the undefeated champion stumble. 5 landed before Thrace even turned around, a calculated strike to the nerve cluster behind his primary shoulder that made his rightmost arm go temporarily numb. The entire arena fell silent, complete, absolute silence. And then chaos erupted. Kaera found herself running before she realized she'd made the decision. Her emergency clearance getting her through security doors and down corridors that led to the arena floor. Her mind racing with questions that had no rational answers. The fight had continued, of course, with Thrace eventually rallying his legendary defenses and the match being called a draw after Marcus refused to yield despite being outmatched in strength and durability. But those 5 strikes, those impossible, perfect, lightning-fast strikes, had changed everything. She reached the preparation rooms just as Marcus emerged, a medic treating the purple bruise blooming across his cheekbone, his knuckles wrapped in regenerative bandages, his grin still somehow intact despite the split lip. "Tell me the truth," Kaera said without preamble, her violet eyes searching his face for answers, her fingers unconsciously gripping the datapad she carried like a shield. "What are you?" He laughed, actually laughed, and it was such a warm sound that it seemed to push back the cold, recycled air of the station. "Last I checked, human. From Seattle specifically, if we're getting technical. Humans don't move like that. I've studied 47 species combat methodologies. What you did violated every predictive algorithm we have for your species' reaction time and kinesthetic awareness." Big words for someone who sounds worried. His expression softened. "I'm not enhanced, if that's what you're asking. No implants, no genetic modifications, no alien training, just..." He paused, and for the first time, she saw something vulnerable flash across his features. Just a guy who learned early that being fast matters more than being strong when you're always the smallest one in the room. That honesty disarmed her more effectively than any weapon. She sat down on the bench beside him, close enough to see the very human exhaustion in his eyes, far enough to maintain professional distance, even though everything in her wanted to close that gap. They're going to come for you now, she said quietly. Every warrior in this sector who saw what you just did. They'll want to test themselves against the human who touched the untouchable. Let them come. There was no bravado in his voice, just acceptance. I didn't come to the frontier station to hide. Then why did you come? The question hung between them, and Kaera realized she was holding her breath. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, and she felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the physical and everything to do with the way he seemed to see past her position as a bridge officer, past her species' reputation for emotional coldness, straight to the person underneath who collected ancient poetry and wondered what rain felt like. Would you believe me if I said I was looking for something I couldn't find back home? His voice was barely above a whisper. A place where being different was normal, where the quiet kid who studied movement and rhythm instead of playing football might actually fit in. She understood that loneliness more than he could know. My people believe emotions make you weak, she heard herself say. That the pursuit of perfect logic is the only worthy goal. I write poetry in dead languages and cry at beautiful sunsets. I'm considered defective by Aetheran standards. Then it's a good thing we're both far from home. His hand moved, hesitant, and settled near hers on the bench. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his skin. Before she could respond, the door burst open and Captain Vecthar strode in, his crystalline exoskeleton clicking with each step, his many-faceted eyes gleaming with an expression Kaera had learned to dread. Human Kane, the Council wishes to speak with you regarding your combat methodology. There are concerns that you may possess undisclosed advantages. Marcus stood, and Kaera saw him shift into a different version of himself, more guarded, more careful. I'll cooperate with any testing they want. I've got nothing to hide. The next 3 days were a blur of medical scans, combat analysis, and political maneuvering that Kaera watched from the periphery of her duties. The results were conclusive and baffling. Marcus was entirely, completely, ordinarily human. His reflexes were at the top end of human normal. His muscle fiber composition was athletic but not extraordinary. His neural conductivity was unremarkable. The only notable finding was an unusually high number of neural pathways dedicated to pattern recognition and spatial processing, something the medical team attributed to intensive training rather than genetic advantage. It's not what he is, Kaera explained to Zythe in the navigation bay, her fingers dancing across holographic star charts without really seeing them. It's what he's learned. Earth has hundreds of combat systems developed over thousands of years, each one refined through practical application. He's synthesized them into something personal, something adaptive. You've been researching human martial arts? Zythe's tone was amused. I've been researching Marcus. She didn't even pretend otherwise anymore. His fight wasn't about being faster or stronger. He read Thrace's patterns, recognized the tells, positioned himself where the attacks wouldn't be. It's beautiful in a way, like watching mathematics become dance. You're falling for him. It wasn't a question. Kaera stopped, her hands hovering over the controls, and felt the truth of it settle into her bones. That would be inadvisable. When has your heart ever been advised? Zythe's laugh was gentle. Go find him before someone else does. She found Marcus on the observation deck, the one that faced the Veil Nebula, his silhouette backlit by swirls of cosmic dust that painted the darkness in shades of purple and gold. They cleared you, she said, moving to stand beside him. No charges of biological enhancement or fraudulent representation. I know. Vecthar told me an hour ago. He didn't look away from the view. He also told me that 17 different warriors have challenged me to formal duels. Apparently, I'm a hot commodity in the beat-up-the-human market. You don't have to accept any of them. Yeah, I do. Now he turned to face her, and she saw the determination carved into every line of his expression. Because if I don't, if I hide, then I'm not actually proving anything except that I got lucky once. Those 5 strikes, they matter. Kaera, they matter because they show that humans belong out here among the stars, that we can compete, that we're more than our tech level or our planet's position in the galactic backwater. She stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of green in his brown eyes. And what if you get hurt? What if the next opponent is faster than Thrace, or smarter, or simply luckier? Then I get hurt. His hand came up, and this time he didn't hesitate, his fingers brushing against her cheek with a tenderness that made her breath catch. But I'd regret not trying more than I'd regret any bruise or broken bone. Some things are worth the risk. Marcus, his name was a prayer and a warning and a confession all at once. I'm terrified of watching you fight. I've seen the names on that challenge list. Kroth the Bonebreaker, Sylvax the Phantom, Vrender of the Seven Blades. These aren't honor-bound warriors like Thrace. Some of them want to hurt you just to prove humanity doesn't belong at the table. Then be in my corner. The request was so simple, so earnest. Be the person I look for in the crowd. Give me a reason to stay standing. How could she refuse? How could she do anything but nod, her silver hair falling forward as she leaned her forehead against his, breathing in the strange familiar scent of him, feeling the steady beat of his human heart through the space between them? I'll be there, she whispered. Every fight, every challenge. But you have to promise me something, anything. Promise me you'll stay. Don't let this change you into something hard and cold. Don't let the violence take the person who laughed with a split lip and spoke about being different like it was a gift. His arms came around her. Then, and she let herself be held, let herself feel small and protected and cherished in a way her people would never understand. I promise, he breathed against her hair. As long as you promise to keep showing me that poetry you think no one knows about. Deal? Deal. The fights came like clockwork, one every few days, each one broadcast across the station and beyond. Marcus won some, lost others, but every single time, he gave them something to remember. Against Kroth he lasted 40 minutes before a submission hold ended the match, but not before landing a strike combination that actually staggered the massive Urgoth warrior. Against Sylvax he won by exploiting the reptilian fighter's reliance on thermal sensing, using the arena's heat vents to mask his movements. Vrender defeated him handily, but even that warrior acknowledged that Marcus had adapted 3 times during their bout, forcing improvisations that hadn't been needed in years. And through it all, Kaera was there. She learned to read the signs of his fatigue, brought him water that was the exact temperature he preferred, sat with him in the medical bay and read her poetry aloud while regenerators healed his injuries. She watched him become famous, watched the galaxy start to see humanity through the lens of this one brave, stubborn, beautiful man who refused to back down. They're calling you the pattern breaker now, she told him one night in her quarters, his head resting in her lap while her fingers traced idle patterns through his dark hair. Because you don't fight the way anyone expects. I kind of like it better than that crazy human. His eyes were closed. His body finally relaxed after a brutal match against a Korvathi warrior whose speed had nearly overwhelmed him. What do they call you? Your weakness. She said it without inflection, but he sat up immediately, searching her face. What? There are discussions in the command channels. Some believe that your attachment to me could be exploited, that threatening me would give opponents leverage against you. She watched emotions cascade across his face, anger, fear, protectiveness, and then something that looked like calculation. They're not wrong, he said finally. You are my weakness. You're also my strength, my reason for being better, my reminder of what matters. If that makes me vulnerable, so be it. Marcus, I'm trying to warn you and I'm telling you I don't care. He took her hands, his grip firm and sure. Let them see. Let the whole galaxy know that this human loves you. That I'd forfeit every fight, every scrap of reputation, every challenge, to keep you safe. Because that's human too, Kaera. We love fierce and we love true. And we don't apologize for it. The words hit her like a physical force. Love. He'd said it so casually, so certainly, like it was the most obvious truth in the universe. You love me, she repeated, tasting the shape of the words. Deeply, completely, probably and wisely, given that we've known each other for 3 weeks. That crooked smile appeared, the one that had first caught her attention in the arena. But I've never been particularly wise. My people don't love. Not like this. We have partnerships based on compatible logic patterns and mutual benefit. Your people are missing out. He leaned in, and she met him halfway, their kiss, soft and sweet and tasting of forever. I love you too, she whispered, when they parted. In case that wasn't clear. Illogical, inadvisable, impossible to quantify or justify, and I love you anyway. The moment stretched, perfect and crystalline, until her unit chirped with an incoming priority message. Kaera read it once, then again, her blood turning cold. What is it? Marcus was already alert, already reading her body language. Thrace has invoked the right of completion. Her voice felt distant to her own ears. He's challenging you to a final match, unrestricted combat, to be fought in 3 days' time. Okay, Just that, just calm acceptance. You don't understand. Unrestricted means no safety protocols, no medical interventions during the fight, no yield option. It ends when one party cannot continue, or she couldn't say it, or dies. He finished for her. Yeah, I got that part. Then you understand you can't accept. Thrace is a decorated warrior with decades of experience. Without the safety measures, without Marcus, this is how he protects his reputation. You touched him, you marked him as less than untouchable, and he needs to erase that in the most permanent way possible. If I refuse, every fight before this means nothing. I become the human who talked big until the stakes got real. He stood, pacing to the window where stars wheeled in their eternal dance. But if I accept and lose, I make humanity look weak or reckless. And if I somehow win, you can't win. She was on her feet too, her usual composure cracking. I've watched you fight, I've seen your brilliance and your courage, and I'm telling you, as someone who has studied Thrace's every recorded match, that you cannot win this. Then I'll lose fighting. His jaw set in that stubborn line she'd come to know so well. But I'll lose on my feet, showing them that humans don't quit, don't surrender, don't bow to fear. That has to count for something. It counts for nothing if you're dead. The word ripped from her throat, raw and terrible. And suddenly she was crying, luminescent tears tracking down her cheeks like falling stars. You promised me you wouldn't let this change you, wouldn't let the violence take you, and now you're talking about dying for pride? He was there in an instant, his arms around her, his hand cradling the back of her head. Not pride, principle. There's a difference. Not to me. Not when the result is the same. She pulled back enough to look at him, to let him see the fear and fury and desperate love in her eyes. Refuse the challenge. We'll leave the station, find somewhere the Corthian jurisdiction doesn't reach, build a life that doesn't revolve around you proving yourself in blood. Could you respect me if I ran? The question was gentle but unyielding. Could you love the version of me that chose safety over conviction? She wanted to say yes, wanted to lie, but the truth stuck in her throat. Because she knew him, knew that the core of who he was resided in this exact quality of standing firm against impossible odds. I hate that you're right, she whispered. I hate it so much. Then help me. His forehead pressed against hers. You've studied Thrace. You know patterns and tells and weaknesses. Help me find the one chance in 1,000 where I walk out of that arena alive. They worked through the night, reviewing hull recordings until her eyes burned, mapping Thrace's movements into predictive models, searching for the microscopic gaps in his defense that might be exploited. Kaera had never been a combat specialist, but her navigation training meant she understood trajectories and momentum, could calculate angles and timing with computer precision. There, she said as dawnlight began filtering through the viewport, her finger pausing a recording at the exact moment Thrace transitioned between offensive combinations. His upper left arm drops 0.3 seconds before his lower right strikes. It's minute, barely perceptible, but it's consistent across 80% of his matches. Marcus leaned in, his eyes tracking the movement again and again. That's a reflex compensation. He's protecting old injury that healed decades ago, but the pattern remains. She pulled up medical files that she definitely didn't have clearance to access. Severed muscle bundle, surgical repair, full recovery but with slight neural rerouting. His body remembers the weakness even though it no longer exists. So if I can make him think I'm targeting that phantom injury, he'll overcompensate, leaving real openings elsewhere. Marcus was already moving through the motion, testing ranges and angles. It's not much, but it's something. The 3 days evaporated like morning mist, filled with training and planning and stolen moments of tenderness that felt like goodbye rehearsals. Kaera memorized the way Marcus laughed, the exact shade of warmth in his eyes, the calluses on his hands, and the rhythm of his breathing. If these were their last days together, she would carry every detail into whatever came after. The arena was packed when the hour arrived, every viewing gallery full, holofeeds streaming to millions across the sector. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a referendum on humanity's place among the stars, on whether courage could overcome experience, on whether love was strength or fatal distraction. Kaera stood in the front row, close enough to see Marcus's face when he looked up at her from the arena floor. He didn't smile, didn't offer false confidence, just mouthed 3 words, I love you. She pressed her palm to the barrier, and he mirrored the gesture, separated by transparent alloy and the terrible chasm of what was about to happen. Thrace entered to a roar of approval from the Corthian section, his forearms spread wide, his warrior's pride radiating like heat. Human, his voice boomed through the arena's acoustics. You have shown courage, and for that, you have earned a warrior's death. May your ancestors welcome you with honor. Or, Marcus replied, his voice calm and clear, I could just win. That's also an option. The laughter that rippled through the crowd was cut short by the bell, and Thrace exploded into motion with even more speed than their first encounter, clearly intent on ending this quickly. But Marcus had spent 72 hours preparing for exactly this approach, and he flowed through the initial assault like smoke, not bothering to counter, just surviving, watching, confirming the patterns Kaera had identified. 30 seconds in, Thrace landed the first strike, a glancing blow to Marcus's shoulder that would definitely leave a bruise but wasn't debilitating. The crowd cheered. Marcus used the momentum to spin away, creating space. That all you got? He taunted, and Kaera's heart clenched because she knew what he was doing, knew he was trading safety for information, learning Thrace's rhythm at the cost of his own body. Another exchange, another hit absorbed, this one to Marcus's ribs, and she saw him wince, saw the pain flash across his features before he controlled it. But she also saw the way his eyes tracked Thrace's upper left arm, saw the moment he confirmed the pattern. The fight shifted. Marcus stopped defending and started attacking, not with power, but with surgical precision, every strike aimed at forcing Thrace to react, to fall into his ingrained defensive patterns. The feint at Thrace's old injury drew exactly the overcompensation Kaera had predicted, and Marcus's real attack slipped through to connect with the nerve cluster under Thrace's primary arm. The Corthian warrior's eyes widened fractionally, surprise, respect, and then fury. What followed was the most brutal minute of combat Kaera had ever witnessed, Thrace abandoning all technique to simply overwhelm Marcus with relentless aggression. She watched the human go down, watched him roll away from a strike that cracked the arena floor, watched him come up bleeding from a cut above his eye that sheeted his vision in red. Stay down, she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear, knowing he wouldn't listen even if he could. Marcus wiped the blood from his face and smiled, actually smiled, and launched himself back into the fight. He was slower now, favoring his left side where Thrace had landed a devastating body shot, but his eyes were still clear, still calculating. He traded hits he couldn't afford for positioning. He led Thrace through a sequence that the commander had executed 1,000 times in 1,000 victories. And at the exact moment when muscle memory overrode conscious thought, Marcus did something no one expected. He went high. Thrace's defenses were legendary at every level except one. No opponent had ever successfully attacked from above because his height and reach made it tactically absurd. But Marcus had never been bound by what was tactically sound, only by what was possible, and he used the arena wall itself as a launch point. His feet finding purchase on the barrier for half a second before momentum carried him up and over Thrace's guard. The strike he delivered to the crown of Thrace's skull wasn't powerful, wasn't meant to be, but it was placed with absolute precision on the cranial nerve cluster that governed equilibrium. Thrace staggered, his forearms windmilling for balance, and Marcus landed behind him, driving a follow-up into the small of the commander's back. Thrace went down. The arena held its breath. Kaera's hands were pressed so hard against the barrier that her palms ached, her entire being focused on Marcus as he stood there, swaying slightly, bleeding, exhausted, but standing. Thrace rose slowly, deliberately, and for a terrible moment, Kaera thought the fight would continue, thought Marcus had nothing left to give. But then Thrace did something extraordinary. He bowed. A full warrior's bow, all for arms crossed over his chest, his head lowered in unmistakable respect. The fight is yours, pattern breaker. Thrace's voice rang out clear and strong. You have done what none thought possible, and you have done it with honor. I acknowledge defeat. The arena erupted. But Kaera was already moving, her security clearance, getting her through doors and down corridors in a blur of desperate speed. She reached the arena floor just as Marcus's legs gave out, caught him before he hit the ground, her arms wrapping around him as medical teams swarmed. You impossible, brilliant, infuriating man, she said, through tears that wouldn't stop falling. You actually did it. Told you. I could win, he managed, his grin weak but genuine. Also, I think I broke several ribs. Maybe all of them. Is all of them possible? Don't you dare joke right now. But she was laughing and crying simultaneously, pressing her lips to his forehead, his cheeks anywhere she could reach. "You're never fighting again. Do you understand? Never. I'm going to wrap you in protective foam and never let you do anything more dangerous than navigation calculations." Sounds boring. His hand came up to touch her face, his thumb brushing away her luminescent tears. "But if you're there, could be nice." The medical team insisted on taking him. Of course, and Kaera rode with him to the facility, holding his hand while regenerators worked and doctors muttered about humans having far too little regard for their own skeletal integrity. 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, severe bruising, and a concussion that would have killed a human with less stubbornness, they said. He'd be fine in a week with proper treatment. Kaera didn't leave his side for any of it. When Marcus finally woke in a private recovery room, the first thing he saw was her, curled in a chair beside his bed, her silver hair falling across her face, finally asleep after 3 days of worry. He watched her for a long moment, this impossible woman who had somehow decided to love him back, and felt something settle deep in his chest. Not victory, not pride, but contentment. "Hey," he said softly, and her eyes opened immediately, violet meeting brown. "So, I've been thinking, you should be resting." Not thinking, but she was smiling, moving to sit on the edge of his bed. "Thinking is what got you half killed. What if we went somewhere?" The words came out in a rush. "After I heal. What if we requested transfer to an exploration vessel? Something on the edge of charted space where every day is discovery instead of combat. Where I can be more than the human who fights, and you can be more than the Aetheran who feels." Kaera stared at him, her expression cycling through surprise, hope, and something that looked like joy. "You want to explore the universe with me? I want to wake up every day next to you and see what we find. Stars, planets, anomalies, new civilizations, weird space phenomena, whatever the galaxy wants to throw at us." His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing perfectly. "I came to the frontier station looking for a place to belong. Turns out I was looking for a person instead. That's perhaps the most illogical, beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me." She leaned down, her forehead resting against his. "Yes, yes to exploration, to discovery, to building something that's ours. Yes, to all of it." They kissed then, soft and slow and full of promise. And somewhere in the cold mathematics of the universe, 2 unlikely souls found their orbit, gravity binding them together in ways that no equation could predict and no force could break. 6 months later, the exploration vessel Meridian's Hope departed Frontier Station with a crew of 15, including a human combat specialist who'd become a legend for landing 5 strikes before his opponent realized the fight had begun, and an Aetheran navigation officer who wrote poetry about the man she loved. They charted courses through uncharted nebulae, discovered 3 habitable worlds, made first contact with 2 new species, and somehow, against all probability and logic, proved that the greatest adventure wasn't in the destinations they reached, but in choosing each day to reach for them together.